You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
Da 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 da. God, Alex Stein made that music many years ago when we first started third year bonus solo episodes on the Mindcast. This is Ryan Singer. Welcome to another episode of Me and Paranormal You. I hope you're doing well. We're in the 300s now, so you think we might have figured out some kind of form, some kind of style, some kind of, I don't know, map for what we're doing on these. But alas, here we are, flying by the seat of our pants. I was moved recently, and by recently I mean moments before you're hearing my voice, to get on the microphone and start talking about some things. There's a couple different things happening simultaneously. One of them is the Corpus Hermeticum. Another one is the Trickster and the Paranormal by George P. Hansen. Another one is the Book of Symbols, which was a great gift I received. I believe it was it for my birthday last year? It was from my good friends, the Stonebergs, Dave Stone and Katie Strandberg. So anyway, I want to read you a segment that's going to kind of launch off where I'm coming from right now. And this is from Chapter 17 of The Trickster and the Paranormal by George P. Hansen. This is a must-own book for all of us that are in love with and interested in the paranormal and the supernatural, the mystical, the unknown. Unbounded Conditions. That's the name of this chapter. Bigfoot sightings, cattle mutilations, and UFO flaps are some of the largest paranormal manifestations. With them, no clearly defined group of people is involved, but rather participation is unbounded. Any number of people can be witnesses. The phenomena occur over indefinite areas and for indeterminate periods of time. These are often exotic and confusing, and the conditions surrounding them are ill-defined and unstructured. Examples of more structured occurrences include seances held in pre-designated rooms with known participants, ritual magic ceremonies that cast magic circles of protection with specified procedures, various cultures' rituals to propitiate spirits of the dead, and parapsychology's laboratory methods to constrain and designate the phenomena to be observed. In these examples, the participants are known to each other. The locations and times of activities are clearly demarcated, and the beliefs, expectations, and paradigms are understood. Now, in contrast here, this is where it gets interesting. Well, I mean, it's all interesting, right? But this is where it really starts to kind of the unfolding, right? In unbounded cases, roles and identities of players may be ambiguous. For example, during major UFO flaps, reports of, quote, men in black and, quote, visitations by government agents and sightings of phantom helicopters are common, but their relationships to the original UFO sightings typically remain obscure. Strange characters emerge who may or may not be part of some orchestrated disinformation campaign, and hoaxers sometimes infiltrate research groups in order to make their plots more effective. These unbounded situations are overlooked or avoided by most researchers, especially by those in laboratories, or with tenured academic positions, or with established reputations in respectable areas. Unbounded phenomena are messy. Gathering reliable information is difficult. Let me say that again. Gathering reliable information is difficult. And trickster manifestations are acute. These factors conspire to discourage scientific investigation despite the intriguing reports. And lastly, but not leastly, another drawback to studying such phenomena is that they intrude into the personal lives of investigators. The full impact of this perhaps cannot be appreciated unless one has had direct experience. A couple examples may help illustrate. He goes on, there's a Ralph Steiner case study and some other things from 1992, a journalist in San Francisco. So lots of interesting stuff there, Don Pact. Invade the personal lives of investigators. You can hear the book in the background probably because, this book has got some weight to it. It's over 500 pages long when you include the bibliography. I just can't say the word bibliography in a normal voice. It's always been impossible for me. It got me kicked out of grad school. My professors would not tolerate me being like, well, when it came to trying to, compile my bibliography, and they'd be like, say bibliography normal. In a normal way. And I'd be like, I cannot say bibliography in a normal way. It's just one of those words. I think it's a combination of sounds and syllables. It's a match made in heaven for silliness. So bibliography is where it is. Anyway, so over 500 pages, what the bibliography included, which is obviously part of the book. And if you're not reading the bibliography, you're not reading a book. Did you know that? I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I don't take that hard of a stance on blah, 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 blah. Okay. Oh. Me saying the word blah, blah, blah has put my software on a fritz. I wish you could see what's happening. I'm going to have to hit pause on the record. And tell you what's happening. See if my bibliography. Oh, now we're back. Never mind. Nope, we're not. I'll be right back. I couldn't tell you what's happening. It's on the Fritz. It's on the comedian James Fritz. By the way, James Fritz, brilliant stand-up comedian. If you don't know him, you should. Old Jimmy Fritz. Okay, now I wanted to read something from the Corpus Hermeticum that ties directly in to what we just heard, or what I just read. If I may indulge myself here. Oh gosh, did I mark it? This is a practical problem. This is a problem that should be easily solved. Anyway, if you're not familiar with the Corpus Hermeticum, I can't tell you enough how interesting and fascinating it is, and yet how dense, and at times difficult to read. And by at times, I mean the whole time you're reading it. Okay, at least the whole time I am reading it. It's a conversation between the Great Shepherd and here we go. I think I found it. Anyway, it ties. I swear this ties into things, and it ties into idealism and some other stuff that I've been just really on one about. Give me 1 second. This is unacceptable. And I found it. Here we go. Okay, this is from, I don't know, it's what is it, a stanza or a verse 17 from the first chapter of the Corpus Hermeticum. This is interesting. I'll start from the top, and then we'll get into, you'll know when the juice happens, because I'll be like, this is the juice happening. Okay, so number 17. In such wise then, as I have said, the generation of these 7 came to pass. Earth was as woman, her water filled with longing. Ripeness she took from fire, spirit from ether. Nature thus brought forth frames to suit the form of man. And man from light and life changed into soul and mind. From life to soul, from light to mind. Okay, now are you getting chills over here? I hope you are getting the chilly willies, because I gotta tell you, from light to mind, the Corpus Hermeticum. If you go back and listen to the quite frankly, the mad ravings of a lunatic, which is me on this podcast. I had an interview with Jessica and Oscar, and they said I was opining about how the paranormal community needs to break free from its obsessive need for scientific validation from the Western world. And Oscar, in its infinite wisdom, said that something much, much older. I kept saying, we need something new, right? And Oscar said, it might actually be something much older. And then in that moment, I, for whatever reason, had a sense, whether it was just a guess that I've just kind of run with and just never let go of, that old thing might be Hermeticism. Now, we can get into some of the history of Hermeticism, whether it's, Hermes Trismegistus. I haven't said his name in a while, so, forgive me. It's not one of the easy, it's not like Dan Smith. It's Hermes Trismegistus. Thrice great Hermes is what it translates from, or two, or whatever. So the point is, what am I talking about here? So I thought it was Hermeticism. And so then I get on this bender for 2 years now about idealism. I've been on an idealistic bender for quite a while. That the universe is consciousness, man, and everything that is material is perceived through this consciousness and with this consciousness. And that consciousness is the advanced technology that ETs are using to travel through space-time. Consciousness is the answer to everything. It is the connective tissue from this to that, from which to whose, whatever. And so you get it, right? So consciousness is the key. So I also have been theorizing, and it's not my idea, most certainly. I've had the idea without, necessarily getting it from somewhere else. But I guarantee you it's not a new idea. That, the observation effect does matter when it comes to paranormal phenomena. For instance, if I'm seeing a ghost with my eyes, a full body apparition, and then someone else in the room takes a photo of the direction of the area of the room where I see this ghost, it might show up as an orb. I believe that. Or it might show up as one of those light rods or something else altogether. It might not show up at all. The observation, the observer is just as important as what is being observed, right? And maybe our expectations and maybe the archetypes that are in our mind, which we can get into in the book of symbols here shortly. So what we've got here is the observation effect changes. And, we all know about the double slit experiment, whether it's a particle or a wavelength. This is kind of where I'm bastardizing the materialistic Western idea of science that I abhor, and then taking parts of it that I like and incorporating it into my own ideas. Okay, so why am I talking like this? Get a grip. I know why. Because I poured myself late at night, and by late I mean after 10 o'clock p.m., an iced coffee, threw in some little stevia, threw in some heavy whipping cream, made myself some cold coffee, okay? Cube it up, dude. I say get cubed, get calved, and get cubed, okay? Because I'm not doing a malt tonight. I still got time. Who knows? Maybe I will. Life from light. And what was it? Oh, shit, I forgot already. I just got so distracted talking about coffee. Why am I talking like that? So it is from life to soul, from light to mind. That's why I got chilly willy, goosey goosey. So I get all goosed up over here, okay? That's why I'm Goose City, USA, population, this guy. When I'm reading from life to soul, from light to mind. Now, to be clear, this is under the context of the creation. This is like a creation story. Okay, that's the context where we're reading this and we're hearing this information. From light to mind. To me, this speaks directly to consciousness, connectedness, balls of light, orbs, whatever you want to call them. Through intention and through consciousness, we can be connected to these balls of light or these orbs. Christopher Bledsoe is a good example. And my friend Carolyn in Florida, also another good example. The CE5 protocols by Dr. Stephen Greer and many others, also a very good example of human-initiated contact with something outside of ourselves that is an intelligence. That would be considered ET, extraterrestrial, or interdimensional, or just outside, non-human biological entity or whatever, NBEs or whatever, non-biological entities. So, or NHI, or so many. The government loves their acronyms. So, from light to mind, which to me speaks to something very simple and something that we probably all inherently already know. And that is that we are connected. And to these phenomena, when we see these balls of light in the sky, I'm going to maybe try to see some later, if it's a nice enough night out. We know that we are of or from potentially the same source of light, the same, the same origins. Maybe we've been chopped off the same block of cheese, right? And some of us are just being used for different things. Some of us are being melted over inside of a fondue fountain or something. That's chocolate. You know what I mean? Melted into some nachos. Some of us are a slice on a veggie sandwich. Some of us are just on a toothpick with a grape. You know, there's lots of different things. I think I don't have to tell you. There's lots of different things you got that with some cheese. Every time I start talking weird, the GarageBand starts going on a fritz. I think the software is telling me, get your shit together and stop being a weirdo. Okay, let's do that. Let's have a couple sippy sips. I'm going to get capped and cubed, and we're going to be right back after these commercials. And just a reminder that if you are a patron, $3 a month, that's very, very little, you can have commercial free. Thank you to all the patrons. Gosh, every time the first of the month rolls around, I am reminded of the beautiful generosity of people that I know and people that I don't know. Thank you for being a patron. You can join up for free over at the Patreon page. And you know what? I'll do this one for everybody. If you're a free patron, you'll get free, commercial free. So you can go over and listen on the patreon.com/Ryan Singer. And you can find me and Paranormal You. And you can listen to this very episode with no commercials just by being a free patron. And, don't tell the people who pay $3 a month or $11. There's people over there paying $11. There's people over there paying a lot more than that because their generosity knows no bounds, and I love them deeply. But don't tell them that. It's our little secret. We'll be right back. Okay, your host with the most problems is back. I don't have problems. I got jokes. Okay, that's an old, who is that? God, she's this, oh, no, hers was backwards. I got it backwards. I don't have jokes. I got problems. Oh, whoa, who is that? Anyway, I'll think of it before the end of the podcast, hopefully. Anyway, I want to read you one more thing from the, Corpus Hermeticum, but you know what? I should probably read this first from the Book of Symbols. Let me mark this over here because this is not staying open to my page. Okay, I want to read you from the Book of Symbols, Reflections on Archetypal Images, the Archive for Research in Archetypal Symbolism. That's what this book is calling itself, or it is. So here we go. Spark. I want to go to page 86. I'm going to talk about spark. As it relates to light or balls of light, and I'm thinking of spark here. I'm drawn to this section. That's why we're reading from it. In Hildegard's vision, the brilliantly fiery. Oh my God. I haven't read this yet. I just kind of was drawn to it. I swear to goodness gracious on this. Wait till you hear this. In Hildegard's vision, the brilliantly fiery, eye-like orb of the Creator God shoots a tongue of flame into the dark, chaotic sphere, sparking the creation of heaven and earth and kindling the hearts of humanity, or of humankind rather, within the lowly lump of clay. Quote, each soul a spark awakened from the great living fire, end quote. The origins of the word spark attest to its fertile, spermatic quality as well as its animating vital essence. The German Spargan means to swell, teem, abound, and then break or burst forth, also relating to a sprout or germinating plant life. Who knew this would be so? Who knew this would be so salacious? What I've been reading. In Latin, spargere is to strew or scatter, as seeds of activating light might be sown in the darkness of fixity or stagnation. A spark is an incandescent particle thrown or remaining from a fire, the tiniest of which, left extinguished in hearth or campfire, can burst to life again ferociously enough to consume, or not console, to consume, very different words, Ryan, to consume a whole house or rage into a forest conflagration. Thus, the spark embodies the incendiary potential of ideas, which can plant the seed for a new invention, scientific discovery, or artistic creation, as well as spark a revolution powerful enough to reconfigure the entire world order. Sparks fly when opposite electrical charges join or conflict, and when passions ignite between two people, whether in love, anger, or enmity. Okay, so one can imagine the awe-inspired in ancient humans the first time that two stones struck together released sparks, as though from hiding deep within. Many Native American tribes venerated flint, a hard quartz that sparks when struck with steel, regarding it as a god of fire, and using it as a lucky charm to protect against bad magic and aid in the search for buried gold. Okay, so, wow. The orb of God, right? The eye-like orb of the Creator God shoots a tongue of flame into the dark, chaotic sphere, sparking the creation of heaven and earth, and kindling the hearts of humankind within the lowly lump of clay. Now, right, how does this all tie together without, it's like, Ryan, you planned this. It's because it's your podcast. You planned it because you're taking effort in planning things that tie together to make some kind of theme for once. Okay, if that's what you say. Now let's go to verse 18 from the Corpus Hermeticum, from the first section. The period being ended, the bond that bound them all was loosened by God's will. Sound familiar? For all the animals being male, female, at the same time with man, were loosed apart. Some became partly male, some in like fashion, partly female. And straightway God spake by his holy word, parenthetically, logos. You've heard logos before. This is what the holy word was. Increase ye in increasing, and multiply in multitude, ye creatures and creations all. And man that hath mind in him, let him learn to know that he himself is deathless, and that the cause of death is love, though love is all. Mom. And then it goes on to say that things were multiplied and people got to bowing after that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, you hear this a lot, and I don't know, I guess Christian rhetoric, go forth and, multiply, and, that's why it's part of the religious reasoning that Christians will try to make sure no one's allowed to have an abortion or deny basic human healthcare access to women who don't want to carry out the term of their pregnancy. It's a shame. And because we're misinterpreting ancient writings to be, the word of God, all, end all be all of certain things, right? Now, is it not interesting when things go, sync together and come together and, and can provide meaning for our lives? Most certainly, yes. That's not what I'm saying. But when you look here at so what are we trying to do here right now? What am I even talking about? And that's a very good question. We're trying to synthesize all of these different things into some kind of coherent thought, if we can. But what's interesting is the archetype of the ball of light, the spark of life, right? The unfolding of reality, which I talked with Jim Vernon about. And over here in the archetype, in the book of symbols, it talks about the eye-like orb of the creator God. And it shoots a tongue of flame into the dark, chaotic sphere, right? The Corpus Hermeticum is talking about light is mind, right? So light is idea, is consciousness, is thought, right? And the creation of a thing is essentially shooting fire into the darkness and then molding the lowly clay, right? Or whatever it says here in the Corpus Hermeticum. So basically you can combine these two writings and they're kind of essentially saying the same thing. And so what does it mean when experiencers are witnesses to orbs of light, balls of fire in the sky? This is fascinating, if nothing else. It is worthy of consideration. And it is also, lastly but not leastly, even though it's not, leastly is not a word, but it should be now, and it is now. It is now. Oh, I have that little diphthong happening when I'm talking. But it should be considered worthwhile of investigation and meaningful. Dare we ascribe meaningfulness to other people's experiences when we were not there? I dare not do such a thing, other than in the compilation of human story and record. I most certainly can find meaningfulness in someone else's story. And that is what life is, a story, and the searching for meaning and also meaningfulness. So, why is it worthy of investigation? Because we don't know who's pulling the strings necessarily. We don't exactly understand what is behind all of this happening. I mean, it's one thing to be like, yeah, balls of light are happening, orbs are happening, balls of fire, they can be summoned in through consciousness, through intention, through meditation. They've been seen in the sky for thousands and thousands of years. We've venerated them. We've even called them gods. We've attributed creation stories using them. And why? Did we have some kind of intuition that makes us think like, oh, this is important. This, whatever that crazy thing is I saw that I can't explain, has something to do with why I'm even here and how I'm even here. Is that possible that the intuition, the collective intuition of the human species or animal has locked in into a knowingness about its own origins to the degree of being able to say these things and then put them out in stories through ages and generations being passed down. And then when we read them thousands of years later, or we hear them through the oral tradition thousands of years later, they resonate. They get us all goosebumped. Is that possible? Well, most certainly I would say it is, because that's where we're at, man. That's the life we're living. That's the world we're living in right now. You're listening to it and you're looking at it and you're feeling it. So that's why it's worthy of investigation. And that's why at times when others who have been blinded by the materialistic blindfold, when they dismiss the experiencer, because the experiencer tells a story of maybe a spontaneous paranormal experience, an SPE, that cannot be defined by the tools that the blindfolded, scientifically, materialistically minded person has at their disposal. When they can't understand, when they can't synthesize that into something that makes sense to them, they dismiss it. And much in the same way that those of us who are idealistically minded and believe, in that, might be prone to dismiss a practical explanation for something, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like I've never been inclined to tell someone with a very materialistic viewpoint or explanation for something that I considered to be potentially, not even guaranteed, but potentially, phenomenal, that I haven't been inclined. Like my default is just to tell that person to get fucked. To get fucked. Okay, so I am also biased. That's why I had a malt last night. I've been very anti-malt. And I was like, I gotta have a malt. I have to see what the fuss is about. And guess what? They're good. Because guess what? They're sugar. It's probably a little more sugar than a milkshake, actually, because it's got the malt powder, which I'm guessing is sugar-based. So, of course it's good. It's got even more sugar than my shake. Oh, you want to put more sugar in my shake? Malt it up, kid. Malt it up, kid. I'm about to. Malt it up, kid. That's what I was born to do. Okay, I'd like to give a shout out to Crisscross for, taking their lyrics and changing them to malts. Okay, so, people of a certain age will know Crisscross. Now, we shouldn't dismiss. We shouldn't be dismissive in general. That seems to be a problematic way to approach the world. It's a very closed-minded approach. And I'd like to think I'm not closed-minded. But I'll tell you, sometimes you got to get a crowbar in there and you got to wedge me open because there's certain things I'm just not having. You know what I mean? Like, white supremacy and fascism. I won't have those. The mind is closed. The case closed on those, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the interpretation of experience when it comes to the unknowable or the unexplained. That's what we're talking about here. So that's why it's worthy of investigation when people are having experiences that not only shake them up, rattle them, maybe change their life, usually for the better, hopefully, maybe sometimes for the worse also. Let's not be insensitive here. When people are having those kinds of experiences, it's worthy of at least listening and trying to understand. And especially when those stories, when we can find that those stories somehow are loosely or directly, very tightly tied to, I got to sneeze. Excuse me, golly, I should edit that out, but I'm not going to because this is just, we're raw dogging it. I probably shouldn't say that. You get it. So this is a program for adults. So, I sneezed into my elbow. Don't worry about it. So, so if they're loosely tied or tightly tied to ancient archetypal imagery, things start to get interesting. Even though they've been interesting the whole time, but there now is layered another topsoil of more interest that becomes fertile ground for growing different ideas potentially. So, trying to understand those archetypes and what they mean and how they even got there. And how did they get there? If our subconscious is blasting out these images on a grand scale through a collective consciousness to try to, or not to try to, but to manifest visual images, holograms, hallucinations, etc., that thousands and millions of people are experiencing, causing profound changes in their life, for better or for worse. Why? Why and where? And how? These are the questions that just are burning us up, wanting to be answered. At least those of us who are listening to this show and like-minded people who are of the curious nature, the inevitability of curiosity. We talked about that the last couple weeks, and I put that graph up over on the Patreon. I think it's free for everybody, but in the 5 stages of what I believe is the inevitability of curiosity. It's not real easy to say, so that's pretty on brand for me to create something that's difficult to kind of even get out of your mouth. Like the name of this show, Me and Paranormal You. A lot of people have trouble saying it. Sometimes I even do. I've been doing it for over a decade. The inevitability of curiosity. So it's fascinating at the very least. And at the very most, it could be completely life-changing. If we were able to crack the code and solve life's biggest mysteries, that doesn't mean other big mysteries would not present themselves, because they assuredly would. We cannot even fathom what those mysteries might be at this time, because much like you don't know who the boss on a video game is 3 levels later that you're going to have to go up against because you haven't gotten through the boss on the first level. It's much like that. You don't know what the next level's going to look like or what it's going to be like. You might have some ideas through things from stories other people have told who maybe have gotten further along, and somehow their stories have filtered back to us. But we don't truly know. There are some people out there who claim to give you the definitive answer about everything, about the true nature of everything. And this is the way it is, and this is what it is. And I'm not saying that some of those people might not be onto something, because assuredly they could be. Now, assuredly, that word's popping in now. That word likes to be said right now. Words have their own words definitely have their own personalities, and they have their own motives. So you have to be careful sometimes, because a word assuredly will try to get in as much as it can, and I assuredly am not up to that. See, assuredly is very assertive because it's in the same ass family. Okay, we got a joke somehow out of that. Maybe. Was it a great joke? I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. I'm really not. It's in the ass family. Assertive, assumption, assuredly, ASS, letter. That's the ass family of words. And I'm not saying that it's not a pejorative. I'm not trying to say that in a condescending way. The ass family is just as beautiful as any other. The purr family, the adj family, ADG, RJ, ADJ family, the adjunct, adjust. Those are the only 2 words I know right now from the adj family. But the con family, you might be thinking, well, do I trust them? Yes, of course you do, unless they're, converging on some kind of conspiracy of confluency in trying to make conservatism. Okay, let's continue on. Wow, this was a fun little word game play time we just had, right? For me anyway. So I thank you for being along for the ride on that. It's worth investigating. That's what we're talking about here. And at the very least, it's fascinating and very, very interesting. And it's impossible to be able to read everything or to know all there is to know about all, the research that has come before and all the researchers who have done the work and written the books. There's so many books out there. So how do you do it? I'm not going to tell you how, because I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. You have to use your intuition and go to where you're guided and pick up the book that is supposed to be picked up. And, a friend of mine just sent me a book that I got to read. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to read that book. I send books to people from time to time, because I feel like that person probably is going to get something out of that book. I've got so many books to read, yet I can't wait to read them. It's not a burden. Sometimes it becomes like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And you feel paralyzed by it, but you'll get there. You'll get there. Let's do one more little commercial break here. A little commercial breaky break. And we're going to come right back. I need to lube the throat pipe, the voice pipe, and maybe get a little more calved and cubed, because I got a late night ahead of me doing more editing. Oh my God, we've got a first cut of Fitz, Friends in the Sky, pretty much in the can. Now, when I say first cut, I mean it doesn't have color correction or audio fixes, and it doesn't have titles and graphics. But the story is laid out. The story is laid out. And you bet your sweet tush that patrons, at least at a certain level, will be getting some sneak peeks, maybe the first color-corrected, audio-leveled version of Fits, Friends in the Sky, the documentary that covers the investigation at Mutilation Ranch. We're going to be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3, no commercials. Okay, welcome back. And to the patrons, I guess we never really went anywhere. I want to read a little more from the section entitled Spark from Firelight and Darkness. Page 86, The Book of Symbols, Reflections on Archetypal Images by Taschen. This is interesting. I mean, everything in here is interesting, and I'd love to just read you this entire book, but I don't think that's what we're here for, so we're not going to do that. Let me find the best way to hold this book and read without making a ton of noise. Every time my elbows hit the table or the desk, I feel like it makes a lot of noise. Anyway, moving on. This is the last section about it. I think what you'll find is interesting because it has some words that we're all pretty interested in over here. And oh my God, the artwork that's used as supplemental to the it's really cool. I'll try to take some photos. In the alchemical fantasy of the scintilla, infinitesimal, God damn it, infinitesimal. I've said this word 1,000 times. I can't say it right now. I would edit this out if I was a proud man. If I would cared that much about people can't think that I ever misspeak. So let's just do it again. The faster I read, sometimes the easier it is. In the alchemical fantasy of the scintilla, infinitesimal sparks are found. I didn't like it. Infinitesimal. I did say it right. Infinitesimal. In the alchemical fantasy of the scintilla, infinitesimal sparks are found in multiple forms in the earth, or finely mingled in the depths of the dark water. When contemplated, these sparks shine in the darkness like fish's eyes, and when gathered together, form the alchemical gold. Carl Jung found that these processes corresponded with his clinical observations of the multiple centers of the psyche. They depict how a human being can become conscious of, or, quote-unquote, gather together, the luminous substance of the personality, extracted from complexes and unconscious projections into a more integrated whole. Yikes. I mean, what does that even mean? There's a lot going on there, right? Wow. When contemplated, these sparks, these infinitesimal sparks, shine in the darkness like fish's eyes, and when gathered together, form the alchemical gold. Jung found that these processes corresponded with his clinical observations in a laboratory or in a clinic of the multiple centers of the psyche. They depict how a human being can become conscious of or gather together the luminous substance of the personality, extracted from complexes and unconscious projections into a more integrated whole. I don't fully understand, as I've tried to integrate these infinitesimal sparks of ideas and words that I'm reading into my whole, into my conscious whole. But I will tell you this. If you were to envision the personality, your personality, my personality, as these sparks, infinitesimal sparks, and if we are able to concentrate or gather together them, right? They corresponded with his clinical observations of doing such. Now, what does that exactly mean? I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what kind of testing they were, Carl Jung's doing, or what kind of instrumentation, et cetera, et cetera. So, imagine, if you will, that we are nothing but a collection of sparks. And that everyone you know is also a collection of sparks. Of light, sparks of energy. Does that sound familiar at all? And man from light and life changed into soul and mind. From life to soul, from light to mind. That was me closing a book being like, we solved it. We figured it out. The Corpus Hermeticum is giving us information that corresponds to archetypal images in the subconscious or in the stories, in the logos, in the word, right? In the words of creation. And what are the words of creation other than figure? Okay, this is a big idea that I'm having for the very first time, so forgive me if it goes off the rails. The words we have discovered and created and invented to describe the machinations of the mind and to label and describe the archetypal images that we use to process the world and therefore project out into the world to make sense of our own existence. What if that is the logos? That is the word. We spoke these things into existence. They have spake into existence. Spake? I think that's like an old word people used to say. It has been spaken. It has been what? This is a salacious episode, right? It has been spaken? No, I didn't say spankin. I said spaken. It has been spaked. No, I think spake is probably... Let's just say bespoke. Let's just say spoke. Let's just say these are the words that were said. Let's just say, how many times did I say that without realizing I was saying I'll say that? So anyway, saying I'll say that about being spake. So if that is the logos, if that is the word, that the creation itself, it's not in the naming of things, okay? I'm not going to go that far to say that. Spoken into existence is a phrase that we're all aware of, right? But these infinitesimal sparks, these are... I don't know, their energy, their feelings, there's concepts, there's invention, right? Through the dark, spit the fire into the sphere eye of the orb itself, or the orb eye of the sphere itself, molding the clay. I mean, is that what we're doing when we are giving words to things? Are we molding the sounds of the universe that we at least are capable of speaking and even understanding? And there's so many different languages. It's great. I mean, I'm on day 62 of Duolingo, relearning Spanish. Actually learning it for the first time, really, probably. So, I got to make sure I do that before it turns midnight. Anyway, I think I'm out of streak freezes. So, anyway, and spoken language isn't the only way to speak. Let me be very, very clear about that. Sign language is next on my list of languages to learn. After I feel good about my Spanish, I'm going to go to sign language. That's my goal. So anyway, what if that's the logos? What if that's the word? Okay, so we're trying to understand our own thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, and we're trying to label intentions, and we're trying to make connections with people through words. And words are nothing but sounds gathered together, right? Do you see how everything just kind of mirrors itself out from small to large, right? Everything kind of has the same form and pattern over and over and over and over again. Is that what sacred geometry is about? Is that, we're talking about fractal, the fractal nature of reality here? Is that the golden ratio? Is this like the beautiful spiral? Is this what we're talking about? We can just see that's how you sound like you might be smarter than you are. You just keep asking questions about things that you don't want to make a definitive statement about. Is this what we're talking about? Is that the true nature of reality? Blah blah blah. Certain ancient astronaut theorists believe that this toaster oven could be a portal to another dimension. Oh well, just because they believe it doesn't mean it's true. So, but is it? Okay. Doesn't mean it is. So, is that life? Is that what it's all about? And I don't know, light becoming soul, right? Isn't that what it is? How many times do I have to read it before I will remember it. I was reading this at like 3 a.m. the other night. I was like, oh my God, this is profound. Light to mind, life to soul, light to mind. That's right, because that's why Carl Jung would have lost his mind hearing about this, because we're talking about light to mind. And we're talking about orbs, and we're talking about seeing lights in the sky. Are these the gathered together lights of other people's minds and their consciousness that we are seeing? I believe that they are conscious things. I mean, I believe that portals are conscious and that we can communicate with them probably if we figure out how. I just believe everything's alive, I guess. Maybe I'll be a little more definitive when I say that. I believe everything is alive because everything stems from consciousness, which is the light, which is the mind. So the material is manifested from that. Sometimes maybe because it was spoken into existence. And it's not just as simple as that. You speak something into existence like, I'm gonna build a house. And then you do the things that make it possible to build a house, right? But you spoke it into existence before. I want to do this. And it sets you out on a path. I want to be a comedian. Set me out on a path to learn how to do that. I want to have a paranormal podcast. Set me out on a path. Very bumpy, and still at times quite bumpy. But nonetheless, set me out on a path to do that. I spoke it into existence. And see, that's a thing I will do, and my friends know this about me. If I have a big idea about something, I tell a bunch of people I'm going to do it. Because then if I don't do it, I look like an idiot. And let me tell you, I have looked like an idiot a bunch of times. And that doesn't mean that I still won't get to those things. How many times have I told you that I got 2 books coming out in the pipeline and 2 other documentaries? I keep saying it because guess what? I'm going to look like a damn fool if I don't ever get those out, which I will. Because I'm speaking them into existence. I had a little pause there because I kind of had an iced coffee burp come up in the middle of that. My apologies if you were intuitive enough to understand that and we're kind of like, oh, he didn't even say excuse me. Well, it's because it didn't happen, but it did. I'm going to hit pause real quick because there's something I want to look at in the Book of Symbols, and I'm not going to make you sit here while I do it. Okay, I'm back. I wanted to go kind of to the origins of this thing, right? And I wanted to read an excerpt, if I could, if I may, from the Soul and Psyche section, and it's the entry is shapeshifting. So let's just go back to where it all started. Encompassing both dangerous borderline confusion and the transcendent experience of the essential unity of being, shape-shifting symbolizes psyche and flux and the coincident psychology of altered states of consciousness. The world is interconnected and always changing. Shapeshifters amplify, reveal, or hide this process. That is their magic. Shamans, tricksters, witches, jinns, druids, gods, and heroes with an affinity for, quote, deconstruction and reconstruction, end quote, share the ability to separate and regroup elements of psychological process, ultimately in service of renewal. This is expressed in the ancient and ubiquitous belief in humanity's power to change into animals at will or at junctures in the cycles of nature. This can be actual bodily change or passage of the soul into an animal, while the human body remains in an altered state of awareness, asleep or in dream time. Let's skip ahead. Shape-shifting has a transcendent dimension as well, both dark and light. A deceptive union was central to the birth of King Arthur of Britain, when Merlin gave Uther Pendragon the form of Egron's husband, tricking her in conceiving the beloved once and future king. Many creatures from the dark side, ghosts, demons, comic book heroes like Spider-Man, even Satan himself, are shapeshifters, symbolizing depth experience, compensating the rational psychological attitude, and so on and so on and so on. Wow. I was trying to find something about a lizard. They don't have lizard in here, which is strange. But I used to tell people I had a lizard in my brain. That's what started this whole thing. That's what made someone confide in me about their shapeshifting ability, because I was weird enough to, and maybe silly enough, to talk about how weird I was. In that moment, that decision changed the course of the rest of my life. And renewal. I used to tell people whenever the lizard is active in my brain, that means a big change is coming. And I know that the lizard is a symbol of renewal as well. Wow. So here we are. Many, many questions. Very few answers. But one thing that I think we do have the answer to, and that is the comfort and community. That is the one thing we can rely on. And podcasting has made that possible. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank you for listening. RyanSingerComedy.com/tour. There's some tour dates coming at you this summer. I'm going to have my Poop Life shirts and also have posters perfect for the bathroom. Poof. Life, so much more than pooping. That's the that's what it says. Very soft t-shirts. The reviews are already in. People love them. Very soft. Conversation pieces out in public as well. Thank you to a bunch of people who have already purchased. I've mailed them all out, so hopefully they'll be coming to you in the coming days and are arriving. And yeah, so thank you so much. And I hope to see you at a live show. And if I don't, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know I sure did.